Insider to get into it.
He
And
should be in Vegas with us.
he's got a big trip coming up. Actually, I do want to start there for a quick sec to take us inside the mind of Ken Rosenthal. Do you freak out when you're on a plane going to the winter meetings because there could be a Wi-Fi issue, and that could be the time you get a text that like Yamamoto signs?
Yeah, that's just the way it is this time of year. There have been times, I think last year, in fact, San Diego, I did not have Wi-Fi going out there. Now, it turned out nothing happened, but it was one of those, I guess, United Airlines flights where, guys, we're not going to have Wi-Fi today, so sorry. And yeah, it was peaceful, but it was making me a little nuts too.
Katie Wu, yesterday we had Katie Wu on. Remember, she was out in Napa, and they signed Sonny Gray, and they give her, and they signed Lance Lynn, and they signed Kyle Gibson. They give him a 2-hour heads up, and she's like, I can't get back from California to be to the press conference. Like, so, that would, if that happened to Ken, he would be a little perturbed, I feel like.
Exactly. All right, so Ken, let's get into it. I know you put out your notes column today, and I wanted to start with Bo Bichette and Alex Bregman. Guys, we haven't spoken a ton about so far this offseason, so can you give us some light on what you wrote about and the realistic chance that those guys are not with their teams for spring training or even also in the future? Like, are there legitimate chances that these two guys are not lifetime Blue Jays and Astros?
Well, Scott, there certainly is a legitimate chance of that. And in fact, I would expect that neither will be a lifetime member of his team. Bregman has 1 year left on his deal. He's represented by Scott Boras. He's going to go to the open market. Most likely will get a really good contract. The Astros have shown over the years that they will let guys go. They let Correa go. They let Springer go. Bichette, a little bit different. He has an extra year on his deal, but again, they have not reached an extension with him. And that is kind of, in my view, what is driving some of these conversations now. There's a shortage of available quality position players on the market. Teams see that a Bregman is unsigned beyond this year, a Bo Bichette is unsigned beyond this year, and they at least inquire. Now, the question I have still is whether those inquiries are coming from the teams or if the Blue Jays and Astros are involved as well. I hear mixed on that, especially with the Blue Jays and Bichette. But the bottom line is the Blue Jays cannot trade Bo Bichette and get the same kind of player in return, most likely. And maybe you can. There's a world out there, I'm sure, where that exists, that kind of deal. But they're trying to win. They're trying to sign Shohei Ohtani from everything we've heard. And I don't know how that you make your team better for 2024 if you're without Bo Bichette. In fact, I'd like to see the trade that would make them better. That would be really intriguing. Bregman, it's the same thing. He is so valuable to that team offensively, defensively, leadership. They don't have an internal replacement. They don't really have anybody that could fill Alex Bregman's spot. So that one I have a harder time seeing happening because the Astros over the years, as I mentioned, they have picked out the guys that they want to extend. Yordan Alvarez, Bregman, his first contract, Altuve. And then they have let others go who they didn't want to extend or keep. So to me, it seems like the Astros have one more run in them. They're not going to rebuild. After this year, it gets trickier because Altuve's up. I expect him to re-sign there. That's his team. Bregman, a little bit different. I expect him to go out in the open market. And then the year after that, you've got Framber Valdez and Kyle Tucker both eligible for free agency. So the Astros are in an interesting spot here. And we'll see how they handle it, but I'd be surprised if they traded Alex Bregman.
But don't they need to replenish their farm system, or do teams at this point want to go for a 1 year all or nothing?
Well, they do need to replenish their farm system, Eric. There's no question about that. And Dana Brown, their general manager, is just completing his first year. He is a guy that really made Atlanta strong with the draft, and he's done a great job in Toronto as well. So I expect with him at the helm that they're going to do some things in the draft, some positive things. Now, you could trade Bregman and replenish your farm system, but you've been to 7 straight LCSs. You want to keep that going. And also, as you guys mentioned, Bregman is going to be $28.5 million this year. For a 1 year guy, and this goes for Juan Soto too, for a 1 year guy, the return is simply not as great when you only have the 1 year of control. So that's problematic when you're talking about trades for Bregman and, yes, even for Soto.
Ken, I have a great idea. Trade Bichette for Bregman. Then we can start over.
That makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
What do you mean? You can move Bichette to third, Haney to
Nah.
third. You know, the
No.
Blue Jays need a third baseman because the Chapman's a free agent. I'm just saying.
Good try, AJ.
No,
We're playing fantasy baseball here. I mean, why not?
it doesn't make sense.
We're not.
Ken, did you catch any of our conversation about Yamamoto? And
A
I
little
also
bit,
kind
yes.
of okay. So I also kind of brought the Mets into the conversation, and I remember you had the article with Max Scherzer, right, when he was getting dealt and getting more context. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
See, that was like a million years ago. So I was trying to make a case that I think the Mets, if they're going after someone like Yamamoto, that's not taking a step back. I know that it's a long-term deal if you're signing him, but spending $200-something million on a pitcher, and then I would assume they probably would do something else too. That's not taking a step back, and I would make the case that they'll probably win more games in 2024 if that's the case, and maybe at least be a wild card contender. Where do you think they're at, and do you buy what I'm selling, that at the time when they told Verlander and Scherzer that they're going to take a step back, or however they phrased it, it was a little bit of sugarcoating to kind of get the result that they needed?
I'm not sure, Scott. I've certainly wondered that myself. If they gave that message to those two pitchers because they wanted those moves to happen and they wanted to set themselves up better in their minds for the future. So, were they ever fully intending to take a step back and not compete in 24? We're going to find out. We're going to find out by how they conduct themselves this offseason. But Yamamoto fits them in the other plan, in the 2025 and beyond plan, because he is so young. And he is a guy that would grow with them as they start to incorporate some of the young talent that they've acquired and are developing on their own. So it remains to be seen exactly how far Steve Cohen will go in this so-called step back. I don't believe he's going to go very far at all. In my view, they're going to spend. They may not spend like they spent the past two off seasons, okay, but they're going to do some things, and they will be involved for Yamamoto. I would not be surprised if they were involved for Ohtani at some level. The problem for the Mets, and maybe it's not a problem at all because Steve Cohen is the owner, at the tax level they're basically paying double on any free agent contract that they agree to with the player. So, for instance, if you give Ohtani $500 million, that's $1 billion. If you give Yamamoto $200 million, that's $400 million because the tax is, I believe, 110%. Maybe Cohen doesn't care. He's shown in many ways that he doesn't care about such things, but if I were him, I might care about that.
Yeah, I think at some point you have to care. Like, I mean, that's a lot of cheese.
Going to Bob Nutting.
Yes.
I just picking on him, but it's going to the teams in revenue sharing, isn't it?
It's going to teams and it's going to the players in the sense of like the 401k stuff, the Vanguard.
Is that what it
stuff.
does?
Some of it goes there. Some of it goes to teams. But anyway, that's where that is. So if they don't get those guys, where do the Mets pivot to in the sense that, oh, well, if we don't get them, we told Scherzer, we told Verlander we weren't really doing anything. Do you see a scenario where they stay silent? Do you see a scenario where they go, okay, no, not at all?
No, they need starting pitching. And I expect that they're going to get at least one free agent starting pitcher, one of the better ones, actually. Maybe it's Jordan Montgomery. Maybe it's someone else. But I just cannot see them going to the point where they're saying 2024 doesn't count. I never believed that, even when Scherzer let me know that day that that's what they told him and that's why he agreed to go. They may not go as deeply into the heavy investments as they did before, but they're still going to be competitive. They're going to try. It's not the Oakland A's of recent vintage. They're going backwards. So while they're retrenching to some degree, or while they did retrench to some degree, it's with the idea of going forward and going forward quickly. So I don't know what the answer is there, and I don't know how it's going to play out, but they're one of the most fascinating teams for just the reasons you guys are bringing up here. What Verlander and Scherzer were told on deadline day or right before that, and where they go from here based on what we know so far.
Ken, I don't know if you saw what I said yesterday about the Yankees, but I said Yamamoto Yamamoto, Bellinger, and Soto all are great fits for the Yankees. Why can't they do it? And obviously, Soto, we're seeing in your article and other people, I've heard it too, that the Padres almost have to trade Juan Soto. But again, why can't the Yankees do this? The Yankees, George Steinbrenner have been like, write a check, and oh yeah, trade for him, trade everybody, right? It's obviously new Yankees, but why does Juan Soto have to be traded, and is he going to end up in New York?
Well, why he has to be traded, as I wrote today, basically just do the math. And the math for the Padres is that their payroll is going down. They took out a $50 million loan to meet their expenses at the end of last season, including player payroll, as we reported in The Athletic, and they're not going to be at 240 again. The numbers we've heard are closer to 200. So you're doing that, you're already at 189. Luxury tax, you're already over. You'd be over for the fourth straight year. Now, maybe they're going to do that, but Peter Seidler was the guy driving all this. And he was the one who was so passionate about bringing that World Series title to San Diego and making it happen. I don't know that the people who are succeeding him in the executive positions are as enthusiastic. They are most likely more mindful of the bottom line than Peter Seidler was. So from that perspective alone, keeping Soto at $33 million or whatever it's going to be in arbitration doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially when it's unlikely, extremely unlikely, you're going to re-sign him. He's already turned down $440 million. You've got Tatis, Bogarts, Machado on the books, as well as Darvish for huge money. There has to be a limit, I am sure, even for the Padres. The other element to this, and this is as important an element as the financial part of it to me, their pitching is in shambles. And it's in shambles because they've had so many free agent defections. I'm talking not just about Snell, but about Waka, Lugo, Nick Martinez, and in the bullpen, Luis Garcia, and oh yes, the closer, Josh Hader. I added it up last night. It's like 700 innings combined. You've got to get pitching. Who is the one player on your roster who can get you some level of pitching? It's Juan Soto, and then you take the money you save by not paying him, and you spend it on some other pitching as well. That, to me, is the obvious choice for them. I'm not saying it's certain to happen, but the way I phrased it in my story, it's almost certain he will be traded. I strongly believe that.
I don't think the White Sox want Juan Soto, but they do have Dylan Cease, and that's a pitcher that a lot of teams want. Is the heavy interest? Is it the heavy interest from the White Sox wanting to trade him and getting a huge piece, or is the heavy interest saying, "Man, we need pitching. Orioles need pitching. Reds need pitching. Pretty much everybody could use a Dylan Cease."
It's both ways, Eric, in my opinion. Obviously, those teams that you mentioned, plus a half dozen more at least, want Dylan Cease for 2 more years of control, recognize what he could be for their staff. And from the White Sox perspective, it's kind of a similar situation to the Padres in that you have a very attractive piece that people want. He can get you other things that you need. They need more good players, right? They need younger players. They need more athletic players. They need pitchers. They need everything. So you've got Cease. You can dangle him out there and see what the best price is, and then you just jump on that offer. Their general manager, Chris Getz, has made it clear they are open for business, and that is the approach he should be taking, and it is the approach that I am sure we're going to see more of from him this offseason. We've already seen the one trade with Atlanta, got him 5 players. I don't know that any of them will pan out, but if 1 or 2 of them do in that trade for Aaron Bummer, that trade's a win. You're trading a reliever, guy at the most volatile position on your team, a good reliever, but he's still a reliever. So I expect they're going to be aggressive because they know and they've recognized now that they need to change some things.
Okay, Ken, let's finish with a guy that's not at the tippy top of the free agent or trade process, but that you wrote about because we're talking to him pretty soon. He's going to be in the studio, Lucas Giolito. We are going to break the news to him that he will be signing with the Atlanta Braves to be with his buddy Reynaldo Lopez. But do you have any other ideas?
That's a lot.
Because he's been playing with him since he was like a kid at this point in the minor leagues. They have traveled everywhere together. So are you going to break his heart and have another team step up with a bigger offer than Atlanta? I actually think there is a decent chance that maybe Atlanta misses out on some starters and goes after like a Giolito and someone else in that category to add up to that mark, and maybe one of them pans out or both for this season. What do you think?
First of all, I don't know that it would break Giolito's heart to be broken up with Ronaldo Lopez if he's getting a great deal somewhere else. And he's a really interesting free agent, and that's why I wrote about him. He is, of the domestic free agent starting pitchers, the youngest one available who is not Julio Urias, who is going to be suspended. Different story entirely. So he offers that. He also offers durability, innings pitched. He's eighth since 2018, eighth overall in innings pitched in the major leagues. That's a quality that we've seen rewarded so far in this offseason. And he also still is striking out guys. He struck out, I believe, had the 16th highest rate last year in the major leagues. Now, the problems are he led the majors, or led the American League, I should say, in home runs allowed, 41. And he wasn't as good with Anaheim and Cleveland as he was with the White Sox. Now, I'd be interested to hear from Lucas if all that movement kind of screwed him up. It wouldn't be surprising to me if it did. He had a really crazy 2 months there at the end of the season. And he's a guy that, while he's not Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery or any of those guys, he is still someone that teams should value in a big way because of the durability, because of the innings, the strikeouts, the age, all that adds up well. And to a team that thinks it can fix pitchers, and there are a number of teams out there that believe that and can do that, I would think he'd be kind of intriguing. So I expect him to do okay, and maybe better than you would think for a guy who allowed 41 homers last year, but he has a lot to offer, and ultimately some team is going to look at him and say, we'll take that guy. That guy might only be a number 4, but we'll take him.
Yep. Absolutely. Good stuff. Ken, appreciate the time. Back to reporting, and we'll look out for some trades and signings and all that, and we'll talk to you later this week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Ken Rosenthal, FT Senior Insider, and the lone star of Fair Territory with Ken Rosenthal, which which dropped yesterday on YouTube, on wherever you get your pods. Check it out. Usually about 30 minutes of all the best stuff from the week, his reports, and a lot more, obviously, to cover.